Hey everyone, David C. Anderson here coming at you from the Knife Center, and we're back for Knife AQ number 25, the series where I answer all your knife questions, whether they're sharp or dull. Going to talk about a few things today, including Sheffield steel, some sharpening techniques, and what it takes to truly be a bad knife nowadays. So let's get into it. All right, thanks everyone for submitting your questions. Before we get into the questions this particular week, as always, if you want a chance to have one of your own questions featured in this series, just make sure to drop it in the comments section and we'll be combing through and picking out some fun ones for future episodes. So without further ado, let's get into this week's questions. All right, first question is from Greg Koleg. He says, is there a flat earth variant available from the Spensa? Nice spelling, my friend. I know, I think you're trolling me a little bit because of the moon landing, lunar landing Spensa we showed last week, but I'm going to turn it around and show you the flat dark earth in KnifeCenter that we have right now. KnifeCenter exclusive. We've got a few of these left, and these are, once they're gone, these aren't coming back. But this is your flat earth Spensa, or flat earth in KnifeCenter in this case. Small drop point here coming in about 475. It's got a gun coat, as KOTE coating on this in that flat dark earth coloration, and definitely very different for any kind of Chris Reeve knife out there. So you're gonna have something collectible, especially, as I said, if these are going away. So may not have been your anticipated answer, but I think it's a good one. All right, next one is from Andrew Young 169AYC. Could you please recommend some good quality and value for money / cheap survival fixed blade, 4 to 5 inches, comparable to your Nordsmith Pilgrim? Sure, I've got a couple here. I've got two. I've got one that is a cheaper or an inexpensive survival knife, and another one that is a bit more expensive, but I think does offer a lot of value for the money. And I'm going to start with that one, the Lion Steel B40, coming in about $150 right now. And you're getting a good amount of product for that. And the reason I find this to be a very good recommendation is it is very, very close in so many key metrics to my Nordsmith Pilgrim design. I will say my Nordsmith Pilgrim was out before the Lion Steel was. I'm not saying that to accuse Lion Steel of anything, but I'm just putting it out there so that you folks know I didn't rip off Lion Steel in this case. You know, my Nordsmith stuff is a much lower on the totem pole in terms of recognition. So I don't believe they intended to put a design out so similar to mine, but the similarities are almost uncanny. The blade length is just about exactly the same, a little bit under 4 inches. The amount of grippable handle, very nearly identical. You've even got a concentrated point there on the back for some hammering with the pommel. The Lion Steel's, of course, is a little more exposed than on the Pilgrim, but honestly, this is the kind of the production knife that I had been looking for when I set out to design that Pilgrim. If this had been out at the time, I probably never would have designed the Pilgrim, because this says everything I want in a survival knife, except for maybe a little bit more finger guard for me personally. But it's a phenomenal knife. Sleipner steel, like I said, just under 4 inches. There's a nice stone-washed finish going on here. Micarta handles, but you can also get wood. Some nice shape to it there. Fits in the hand quite nicely. Crown spine all around, in fact. So even though it sits proud of the tang a little bit, it is it's not going to create a hot spot. You don't have a space to do scraping with a fire steel in this case, but that's the trade-off, of course, you get. But yeah, I mean, for an Italian production knife at $150, it's both less expensive and availability is better than the handmade Pilgrims that I've had a hard time keeping in stock lately. So even though I think these are phenomenal value for the money, they aren't inexpensive, or what was the word you used? Did you say cheap? You did say cheap. But for that, my favorite budget survival knife right now has been, ever since these first landed, is the SRK Compact, the srk-c from Cold Steel, because You've got 5 inches of SK5 carbon steel, so it's not a stainless like this. You've got a substantial finger guard here. You've got a rubber overmold rather than a typical full tang, which I do prefer, but the rubber overmold at this price range, you know, I'm not gonna ding it too much for that. And that price range, this is just over 45 bucks for a really solid knife. 1/8 inch thick with a flat grind as opposed to the thicker, longer ones that came with a hollow grind. I think this is a better cross section for what you want, and just a nice, effective Secure-X sheath. Yeah, nothing fancy, but absolutely gonna get the job done, and a really good bargain for the money. All right, next question comes from C. Byron. It says, my wife has lost some great Spydercos that I've gifted her over the last year or so. We've got horses, so she's constantly using one for cutting twine, etc. Rides daily, and the lost knives are probably sitting somewhere in the middle of the field. When I think of a replacement, her requirements ensure the new blade will join those others in the field. Small to fit a front pocket with a clip. My thoughts are bright, a possible other carrying option, blunt tip, etc. What about the Spyderco Rescue? Yeah, I would say yes, but I would say no also. I would go with the Bird Cara 2 rescue knife. This is a little bit bigger, I think, than your initial suggestion, but the Spyderco Rescue is this sized knife, and if it's a knife that's gonna just get lost, $33 and some change for this guy. So you're not gonna cry like you were losing a full fat Spyderco, so to speak. It's a Chinese import, obviously, at this kind of price. You've got an 8CR series stainless steel with the serrated edge, but you've got a blunt tip so you can cut line. Especially when dealing around animals and that sort of thing. That lack of a point is going to come in handy. The reason I showed the larger one as opposed to the smaller Bird rescue knife that's out there right now is you mentioned a bright color. This one has the orange handle on it. Yeah, it's everything you want in a Spyderco rescue knife in a package that you're not going to be afraid to lose. Plenty of grip options, lots of traction, ambidextrous capability, 4-position pocket clip, lock back. Definitely check that guy out, and yeah, you won't be crying so much when the next one does get lost.
And if knives are anything like sunglasses, you're never going to lose the cheap one.
There you go. Words to live by. Words of wisdom from Thomas. There we go.
I have a few.
Couple. All right. Next question is from Artemio Quintero. Hello again. It's a 2-part question. I have a WorkSharp guided field sharpener, and I can't achieve hair popping sharp when I sharpen with it. I'm not sure if I'm doing something wrong. I get my knife sharp but not hair popping. How can I improve? Prefer a method without machines. And also, how would you determine the angle of the edge of any given knife? Sure, we'll go through. You know, you're not sure what you're doing wrong. You're not quite getting the sharpness where you want. Honestly, it comes down to practice. And if you're still getting the hang of it, if you're still not quite getting there, I don't know what kind of blade you're trying to sharpen right now, but if you're using something like an S30V or 20CV or any of the higher end, really long wear resistant steels, it's going to be comparatively harder than something less expensive. So I would say if you have a knife with something like 8CR or AUS 8, go to town with one of those, practice on those, and once you can get those where you know they're good, you'll know you have the technique right. It just might take a little longer on the higher end steels. But these WorkSharp units are great. You said this is what you have. They run about 30 bucks or a few bucks more for a Benchmade branded version that's otherwise the same. But you've got your diamond plates. You've got, it sounds like you're getting almost all the way there. It might just require a little bit more practice with the ceramic rod and the strop. And key to any of these methods, even on the diamond plates here, is light pressure. You don't want to be pushing down excessively hard, and that's especially true on the strop itself. Now, yeah, just keep at it, keep practicing. As to how to determine the actual edge angle of your knife, if you're not quite sure, I edited your comment a little bit for clarity. You mentioned you had a Chavez that you weren't sure if the edge angle was the same as the 20 degrees they recommend here. What you can do is, it's not going to give you an exact dimension, but you can color in the edge itself with a Sharpie marker, so you've got that black marker there, and then take a few swipes. In this case, I would go on the ceramic here. Just take a few swipes at the angle you're thinking, and take a look at the edge and see where the marker's been taken away. If you're hitting right at the edge, then you'll know you can go a little bit shallower. But if you're not too far off, it's actually not a terrible thing to have just a hint of a micro bevel at the very edge of your blade. Let's say they sharpened it at like 17 degrees and you come in at 20 for that little final honing. It's not the worst thing in the world, in fact. But that can give you a guide as to whether you need to move up or down, even if you're not going to know the exact angle that it is. So hope that helps. And we will also leave links. We've done some videos on sharpening and stropping. Make sure to leave a link to that playlist as well. Next question is from Vent Solaire. Is there an EDC survival neck knife, delicate as a bird and trout, yet tough enough to baton, other than the CR 2.5 with aftermarket kydex? Sure. There's a few out there. One of the ones I really like, just because I'm a Nesmuk fan, is the Neo Necker from Condor. Neat little guy here, $72 with natural micarta, as you can see, and 1095 carbon steel. So same materials as the SE stuff, but of course the SEs are going to have a greater degree of fit and finish, and they're made here in America. The edge on this particular Condor needs a little bit of work, actually, but it's a really cool little design and very sturdy materials overall, both the steel and the handle. So you're going to be able to kind of thump on it a little bit, within reason, of course. And you've got that kydex sheath there. Snap is decent. It's not the best in the world, but it's a really cool little package. And especially if if you like some more of the bushcrafty stuff out there, having a Nesmuk inspired neck knife, I certainly dig it. You've got some holes in there. You could do some lashing onto this if you needed to extend the handle or do that survival knife spear thing that I hate so much. You've got the option here anyway. But yeah, great little EDC shape as well. Very usable tip. Decent amount of sweep to the edge. You can do some good slicing, do some small game work with it as well. Not a ton of belly in this case, but I think it's going to work quite nicely. All right, next question comes from Michael Manalang. Hi DCA, I finally completed my kitchen knife set from Shun Classic. Got them piece by piece. Took a couple of years. It's a great way to do it. But the only thing I'm missing is a cleaver. Shun knives are great, super hard steel and can take a real acute edge, great for slicing, but they can be a little bit chippy and their cleaver seems to be the same way. Can you suggest a true chopping cleaver that's not too wide, is the same styling as the Shun Classic, so it's not out of place? Sure, got something here for you. So here's your Shun Classic. This is a Nakiri, so this is more of a vegetable style of knife, not a big honking meat cleaver. I haven't taken a look at their straight up cleavers because we didn't actually have one in stock on filming day today. But an option you can take a look at that is from a German brand but still doesn't look too out of place is from Henkel's here. This is the Twin 4-Star 2 meat cleaver. Comes in about $150 right now. So you don't get the Packwood handle material or the kind of the offset D that you get from the Shun Classic, but both of them have that steel plate on the back or metal plate on the back and a black handle. So not too far out that it's going to look too out of place. And you got some nice thick stainless steel there, convexed here near the edge. So you got a good bit of weight and a good bit of flare here on the back as well for retention when you're going to town on some meat, breaking down some cuts, that sort of thing. I personally use actually a modified Old Hickory meat cleaver. It's not quite as heavy as this. So this has a little bit more weight, but I modded it and did some cool handles on it. But I'll use this all the time if I'm needing to kind of chunk out meat that's still partially frozen. If I'm chopping up a bunch of sausage before it goes into the pan. Sometimes breaking down a chicken too. I'll do that. So there are a few niche uses for it. And this feels like it's going to do a really good job at the things I would use a cleaver for. So maybe check that guy out. All right, next question comes from Nicholas Bowker. Do you have any Sheffield steel knives, preferably a slip joint? Sure. I don't, actually. But let's talk about Sheffield steel and what it isn't, actually. Sheffield, England, obviously, well, maybe not obviously to some folks out there. But Sheffield used to be kind of one of the knife manufacturing hubs of the world. I say used to be because it really isn't anymore. There's only a handful of folks making stuff today. And one of the companies that is, this is the IXL Wolstenholme Etch hunting knife, even though it says Joseph Rogers on the front. But this is about a $30 knife. It's nothing fancy. It has a carbon steel blade in this case, and just classic wood handles with some grooves here. But the thing with Sheffield knives, or Sheffield-made knives of any kind of make back in the day, is they were often stamped Sheffield or Sheffield steel, but that's not actually a designation. It doesn't mean anything. It could be stainless, it could be carbon, of any type of variety that they might have been commonly using. So Sheffield steel is a thing, but it really isn't a thing. And yeah, there's not a whole lot of makers out there still making knives, and they're typically, I hate to say they're not great, but they're definitely on the lower end of the knife spectrum these days. And obviously you can get into collecting the old school stuff, and more power to you. There's some really cool looking stuff out there. But as for us here, we don't sell old stock stuff like that, or used knives or anything like that. So you'd have to stick to pretty much new stuff, and there's really not a whole lot out there. So hopefully that helps guide you towards the type of stuff you're looking for, though, even though you might not be able to get it from us. Thank you for the question, though. All right, next question comes from Chase Purdue. Got a question for you and your crew. What is the absolute worst knife you have ever owned? As soon as you asked this question, I flashbacks came back to me of this guy right here. Swiss Army knockoff that I got when I was a young lad in the Cub Scouts. I won this from selling popcorn to raise money. And this was the prize I got, and it was the best thing in the world. Eventually, though, it found its way into the back of a drawer, moved cross country with my parents before it was rediscovered. And so many years later, after I knew a thing or two about knives, I picked this up and went, oh my goodness, this is terrible. Let me pull out some of the tools here. I mean, you can see right here on the can opener here, just the surface of the steel is pitted, and this is a stainless steel. This didn't happen to it. This came this way. You can see all the tool. Yeah, it doesn't even snap closed properly. It hits the other tools on the way in. You can see all the tooling and machining marks on the springs and that sort of thing. This corkscrew is just a flat piece of twisted metal. The blade tip is bent. Obviously, stainless china. It's like Sheffield steel. It's stainless china. What's more to say? It's terrible. I think my favorite part, though, was the saw here. Again, you can see all these like nasty tooling marks. Actually, that's a good thing. You think of the cheap knives out there today, they are head and shoulders above what cheap knives were when I was a kid. I mean, I don't think like the worst companies out there are putting anything out quite this bad anymore. But yeah, this saw, check out the saw teeth. This also has a fish scaler. That saw might as well be just another fish scaler. There's no sharpness to it, no point at all. And I can remember as a kid, like sawing away at wood and it wasn't working really well, but I didn't know any better. I was happy as a clam. But only looking back now and actually remembering it, it's like, wow, how did I ever get by with this? And I guess the real answer is I didn't. But that is absolutely hands down the worst knife I have ever owned, and still own to this day, in fact. He did ask for the crew. Thomas, how about you? Do you have a worst knife you've ever owned?
I actually got something similar when I was in Scouts.
Probably a lot of you folks out there had, this is probably also the worst knife you guys have ever owned. Thanks for the trip down memory lane, Chase. I really appreciate it. All right, last question is from Jay Goodman. I said, I've bought around 50 knives this year. How do I stop? My advice to you is 50 is not nearly enough to know whether you need to stop or not. I'd say about 200 maybe in a year, and that'll give you a good gauge of whether you think you've got too much or not, or need to stop. You probably hit that around August, so get back to us then, will you? Thanks for the question. Thanks everyone for questions. And as always, if you want a chance to get one of your own questions featured, make sure to drop them in the comments, and we'll be combing through and finding some good stuff for the upcoming weeks. In the meantime, if you want to get your hands on any of these knives, make sure you click the link in the description. You can pick up any of these, except for the my favorite, worst knife ever. But while you're over there, make sure you also sign up for our Knife Rewards program. Because if you're gonna spend your hard-earned money on one of these knives, you might as well earn some free money to spend on your next one. I'm David C. Anderson from the KnifeCenter signing off. See you next time.